And so you can flow through the conversation using that framework. Emotions, acknowledge and validate. No emotions, cool, gather information. You have all the information you need and people are emotionally stable enough to continue, just use joint problem solving and you flow based on what you see.
I love it. I love it. And one of the little things I think you said in there that I want to make sure we go back and highlight is the importance of asking questions with a curious tone. Questions can be perceived as invitations or attacks. And you just said it's not me versus you, it's you and I versus the problem. But that's not how a lot of people enter into the conversation. They bring their own fears, they bring their own expectations, they bring their own concerns in. And now, whether they realize it or not, they're looking for affirmations of those fears, concerns, and negative expectations. So if I ask a question in any tone that comes off as accusatory, aggressive, disrespectful, even if I don't mean it, my phone goes off in my pocket and I know that that is my kid's baseball coach reminding me that I'm supposed to coach tonight. And my emotional reaction to that leaks out in how I ask the question. The guy I'm talking to doesn't know that. So having that curious tone goes a long way to encourage people to open up and share more information, because it doesn't sound judgmental. It doesn't sound accusatory. It might feel like it's a little detail, but it's a really, really, really important detail.
It's vitally important because, again, think about how we come in with our assumptions. Like you just said, the other side does as well. And most likely, just because of the statistics of this, most people are not well schooled in this. And when I do trainings, I ask people, how many of you have had a negotiation course or training before? And maybe 5 to 10 people raise their hand, right? And these are deal makers. These are leaders of organizations, and they're just untrained in having difficult conversations. And then I say to those 5 to 10% of people, how many of you have had more than one? And all of the hands go down. So you coach your son's baseball team, you do jujitsu. How good can you be at either of those things if you've just done one practice, right? It doesn't work. And so we have to recognize that if we are letting this emotional leakage occur, the other side is perceiving this too. And so let's introduce the term attribution bias. So attribution bias is really just the reality that everybody is asking themselves, why is this happening? Why did Mike do that? Why did Mike say that? And so a lot of times, like you said, we're not going with true curiosity in order to figure out what it is. We're going with biased curiosity to confirm our own conclusions. So if they are fearful in this conversation and then they hear some attitude from you, they are going to assume and attribute that negative attitude to them and this situation. And they're going to say, Mike doesn't like me. Mike's disrespecting me. He doesn't think he's not taking this seriously. Whatever the conclusion, it is probably going to be incorrect. And it's probably going to be very detrimental to you and the conversation. So we have to manage that tone to make sure we don't create that cascade of negative assumptions.
I love all of that. And especially that point at the end, there is a significant percentage of time, the behavior we observe and get upset, frustrated, angry with is a direct result of how they perceived we communicated with them. So if we are more strategic, if we are more intentional, if we are more aware of how we're communicating to others, we can reduce that from happening. And then we can say to ourselves, oh yeah, I did kind of sound accusatory with that question. That probably pissed me off too. I'm going to let that slide and I'm going to refocus. So that's a huge, huge point. You said another word in there that I feel like falls under that attribution bias and might be the most detrimental of all. I hear this all the time from people I work with, teaching, consulting, even just talking with. He disrespected me. Really? Really? Number one, are we 8th graders at recess? Like, is that what this is about? Or worse, are we 21-year-olds at the bar? Like, did you just,
right.
But did he really disrespect you? Or do you feel disrespected based on how your self-image and expectations are currently in conflict with what you just witnessed in this situation? And there are so many times that people take this fear of disrespect, feeling of disrespect, which can be directly related to that attribution bias. They misread it, maybe entirely, if not largely. And now we're going down the wrong road. I was telling this story in a class I taught this week. Years ago, I had to interrogate a professional interrogator. And he had said and done some things to a female colleague that I think most of us as upstanding men who care about their moms and their wives and their daughters would be pretty upset with. And everything that I had heard about this gentleman was expect, and I say this metaphorically in air quotes if you're only listening, a fight, like not an actual like stand up, let's go, but it's going to be an argument. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be whatever. So I'd built my plan around that. I'd rather be lucky than good, ends well, written confession, escort the guy out. I'll tell you the funny story about how that went when we're not recording. And then I take the video back to my office and I sit down with Dave Zalowski, the guy who co-wrote the method that I used. And I felt great, right? Everything went well. It worked out the way we wanted. He watched about 2.5 minutes tops of the start of the video, paused it. He's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what do you mean? What am I doing? What are you doing? What do you mean? What am I doing? Like, I'm starting the interview. This is going to end very well. Like, you should probably watch how this goes. Well, as it plays it a little more, stops. He's like, why are you doing this? Like, doing what? To short circuit the whole story for time here, because I was so convinced this guy was going to pick a metaphorical fight. What do you think I did?
You came in hot.
I did. Absolutely. So I started it. So when he gave it to me, I'm like, there it is. I knew it was coming, but there's a reasonable likelihood that it might not have happened at all. Certainly wouldn't have happened that soon and might not have happened to that degree if I didn't come in feeling like, all right, if this is what he wants, I'm ready. And if Dave didn't sit me down and walk me through that, I likely never would have saw it, never would have realized it, would have felt good about how everything went. When in reality, yes, it was successful, but when you separate the process from the results, there was a way to be much more successful. And had I repeated the same process, I likely wouldn't have repeated the same success. So I think that feeling of disrespect that you just mentioned is like an aside is actually a really important thread that way too many people fall victim to.
Agreed. And one of the things that I love about this story, Mike, is that it shows the power of self-fulfilling prophecies. So you go in assuming things are going to be a certain way, it's going to be a fight, and then you approach it in a way subconsciously that turns it into a fight, therefore just confirming the bias that you came in with. And I think it takes a lot of self-awareness to stop and recognize, hey, the thoughts that I have, they're thoughts, they're not necessarily truths. So we have to come in with a little bit of humility and just recognize, all right, cool, this is how I think it might go. It might not. So let me try to fight my own biases, fight my own demons within my head, and make sure that I don't create that outcome that I fear the most.
Yeah. Super important. And honestly, in transparency, I might not have realized it if Dave didn't walk me through it. Those conversations were so important to my development as a human being, let alone professional. But I equate it to like thinking you played a great game and then sitting down to watch the game tape with Bill Belichick. Like, it doesn't matter how well you think you did, you're going to be sweeping up pieces of your ego at the end of this conversation. But it was critical. You and I were talking a little bit before, but long before I ever thought about sharing that story, about how important it is to recognize, learn from mistakes that we make and apply that to everything that we do. Because we talked about it before, I'd love to flip that question back to you. How has learning from mistakes you've made helped catapult you in your career to where you are now?
It's been huge for me because when you think about the books that you read, the podcasts that you listen to, and of course, not to devalue books or podcasts, okay?
Especially your books and your podcasts.
Thanks. But when you realize it, those are general books applied to general situations. They are not studying you. The only person in the majority of cases that is going to study your own performance and behavior is yourself. And so when I think about negotiation, I think about the fact that we can win every single time with the right mentality. And you're winning if you, number one, use the right techniques to put yourself in the best position for success. That doesn't speak to the actual outcome, but it means that you are doing what is within your control to put yourself in the best position to succeed. And number two, you're winning if you take every conversation as a practice opportunity, and you're going to be your own coach. You're going to replay the tape, and you're going to ask yourself, what did you do well? Try to replicate that. What did you do poorly? And you say, my goal is to not make the same mistake twice. That's it. And as long as you keep on doing that, you're going to improve. Now, again, a lot of people don't take the time to do it, but it's just doing that and improving incrementally. That's what gets you forward. So I really suggest that we start to look at ourselves as our own little experiments. So, okay, in this conversation, what I'm going to do is last time I talked too much. So this time I'm going to try to keep the ball in their side of the court as much as possible, focus on them, see if I can flex that conversational muscle. And if you start almost gamifying it in that type of way, you decrease the pressure that you're putting on yourself because you're not trying to force an outcome. You're just trying to improve a process.
I absolutely love that. And when you mentioned this earlier, so it's where my brain went. But it's like you and I were talking about training jujitsu earlier. I don't have to get a submission, but if I can just pass your guard today, that feels like a win. Like if I can go 5 minutes without actually being submitted, that feels like a win. So like putting these building blocks in place and taking that, not just our bias, but even our self-image. Like I'm a work in progress. There's going to be things I do well. There's going to be things that I don't. And maybe there's going to be situations I do more or less well in. But if I acknowledge that I'm always a work in progress, then I can accept those opportunities because I don't have to look myself in the mirror and say, you suck, you failed. Right. I can look myself in the mirror and say, well, that wasn't how I thought about it in my head, but here's what I learned and here's how we can move.